My daughter-in-law called to confirm her chic Thanksgiving gala. The venue told her it had already been booked under my maiden name. She screamed, "You stole my event." I said, "No, Chelsea. I just took back the table you pushed me away from." The caterer she flaunted? He's serving my guests now. She tried to erase the mother-in-law. Now she's watching my legacy trend. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. She smiled as she told me, "You've earned your rest this year," as if hosting Thanksgiving was a burden, not my legacy. The words settled over Lorraine's chest like a damp cloth, too soft to scream, too heavy to ignore. She looked up from her cup of chamomile tea, her hands still resting on the linen napkin she'd stitched herself years ago. Across the cafe table, Chelsea beamed, the kind of practiced smile Lorraine had seen in every one of her curated Instagram reels. "We've outgrown the house parties," Chelsea continued, lifting her oat milk latte. "This year's more curated, smaller, refined. We just thought you could finally relax." Lorraine nodded slowly, the smile never quite leaving her lips, but faltering just slightly at the corners. The air smelled of rosemary scones and cinnamon foam, but all Lorraine could taste was bitterness. Not the good kind, the betrayal kind. "Oh," she said simply. Chelsea missed the shift, or chose to. She launched into a breakdown of tablescapes, neutral palettes, rented stemware, and her collab with a local chef known for vegan amuse-bouches and beetroot aioli. Lorraine barely heard a word after that. She had hosted Thanksgiving for 28 years, through blizzards, broken ovens, one dramatic kitchen fire, and 2 pregnancies. Her dining table had seen toddlers, toasts, tears, and turkey so tender it made grown men cry. It wasn't just food. It was family. And it was hers. Until now. Chelsea reached into her oversized leather tote and slid a small envelope across the table. "Still want you to feel included," she said brightly. "There's the invite. Don't worry about bringing anything." Lorraine's fingers hesitated over the envelope. The cardstock was thick, ivory, impersonal. Gold foil embossed with 2 words that pierced deeper than any paring knife ever had. The Whitley Gardens Experience, hosted by Chelsea and Alex Montgomery. Not Lorraine. Not even Mom. "Sounds lovely," Lorraine murmured, folding the envelope without opening it. Her voice was even, but something in her chest quietly buckled. Later that evening, she pulled out her old recipe box. Its corners were soft with years, and her late husband Mark's chicken scratch notes were still tucked between the index cards. "Double the cloves in the sweet potatoes. Don't let Alex touch the cranberry sauce." She ran her thumb across his ink, steadying herself. Outside, wind brushed golden leaves along the porch. Inside, Lorraine sat alone at her kitchen table, the same table that once fed 40 guests with laughter thick in the air. She turned on her laptop, her eyes narrowing as she typed, "Whitley Gardens, November 24th, private event booking." The site loaded with elegant simplicity, white background, cursive fonts, dreamy sepia images of garden parties and candlelit soirees. She clicked through to the reservations page and scrolled down. Thanksgiving Day, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Status: available. Lorraine froze. She refreshed the page. Still available. Chelsea had implied it was already secured, that everything was confirmed. But this? She reached for her planner, years of scribbled schedules and holiday menus tumbling from the pocket. She wrote down the venue phone number and the availability timestamp. Her fingers didn't shake. They moved with purpose. Flashback. She saw herself 15 years earlier, apron dusted with flour, holding baby Emma while basting a turkey with one hand and teaching a student how to dice onions with the other. Chelsea was in college back then, just dating Alex. Lorraine had welcomed her into the kitchen with a slice of fresh pecan pie. "You'll always be part of our memories," Chelsea had once said. Now she was scrubbing Lorraine from the future. The next morning, Lorraine sat on her porch as the sun climbed past the fence line. A small stack of cookbooks rested on her lap. She stared at the web page on her tablet one more time as if it might disappear. But the status remained the same, available. The tea in her cup had gone cold, And in that silence, something inside her shifted, not out of spite, but out of reclamation. She stood up slowly, brushed the crumbs off her sweater, and whispered just loud enough for the wind to carry. "If I'm not invited to the table I built, maybe it's time I build one they don't see coming." Lorraine tapped the venue's number into her phone. She didn't hit call, not yet, but her thumb hovered, just long enough to feel the weight of what she was about to do. They called it modern. I called it erasure. The phone buzzed with a ping that felt louder than it should have. Lorraine looked down to see her daughter's text. "I thought you agreed to this?" No hello, no context. Just that. Attached was a screenshot from Chelsea's Instagram story, an overhead shot of a long white table with copper chargers and pampas grass centerpieces. A caption sprawled across the bottom, "This year we're going chic instead of stuffing. Whitley. Thanksgiving. Grateful and glam." Lorraine stared at the photo for a long moment, unsure if the knot in her chest was irritation or heartbreak. It wasn't just the aesthetic shift, it was the erasure. The way the photo had a sterile perfection to it, all symmetry and filters, like warmth had been edited out. No casserole dishes, no laughter spilling off folding chairs, no mismatched platters or little hand-drawn place cards. She replied to her daughter's message with a single word, "Didn't," and left it at that. Lorraine moved through her kitchen like a ghost, opening cabinets with muscle memory. Her hands touched the things she hadn't been asked to use this year: her antique gravy boat, the linen napkins she ironed every November, the pecan pie plate her late husband once chipped with a clumsy slice. Chelsea had called it a chance for Mom to relax. She'd used the same tone people used to describe putting a dog to sleep. Later that day, Lorraine opened an old photo album. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned the pages. There was the year they made cranberry sauce from scratch, the Thanksgiving where the twins wore paper pilgrim hats. One photo stopped her cold. Her grandson, age 7, covered in flour, stirring a bowl with a big wooden spoon. His tiny voice echoed in her head. "Grandma, I'm making the crust just like you." She closed the book gently. At dusk, as the sky flushed soft purple outside her window, Lorraine sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. She typed Whitley Gardens event booking into the search bar, clicked the link, and scrolled with deliberate calm. Her eyes scanned for the date, Thanksgiving Thursday. Status, available. Her heartbeat quickened, a beat louder than she expected. It wasn't that she wanted the space, she wanted the truth. And the truth was this: Chelsea hadn't booked anything. She had merely claimed it, publicly, performatively, without locking it down. Like she believed legacy was just another hashtag to trend. Lorraine reached for the phone, her index finger hovering over the call button. She paused, then tapped. A warm voice picked up after 2 rings. "Whitley Gardens Events, this is Lila speaking." Lorraine kept her tone measured. "Hi, I was calling to inquire about availability for a private dinner on November 23rd. "Oh," Lila said. "Actually, we've had a few inquiries for that date, but no confirmed deposit yet. So technically it's still bookable, if you're ready today." Lorraine didn't answer right away. Her mind flashed to the day she had handed Chelsea the family recipes, saying, "These were handwritten by my grandmother." Chelsea had replied, "Oh, cute," and never looked at them again. Lorraine sat up straighter. "Can you tell me the requirements for booking under a foundation or charitable cause?" "Certainly," Lila said, shifting into a more formal tone. "Do you represent one?" "I do," Lorraine replied softly, "and we're ready." Lila smiled through the phone. "In that case, I'll email the deposit form now." Lorraine heard the ding of an incoming message. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she whispered to the silence of her living room, "This year I won't just attend Thanksgiving. I'll reclaim it." She erased my name from the holiday, so I reserved the space in one she didn't recognize. Lorraine stared at the blank line that asked for an organization name. Her cursor blinked, patient and unbothered, as if the form didn't realize it was about to ignite a fire under a legacy. She inhaled slowly, then typed, "Women of Legacy Gala." Under the organization representative, she didn't use Lorraine Walker, the name on family emails and Christmas cards. She wrote the name etched on her first diploma, the one she'd used as a culinary arts teacher before anyone called her mom or grandma, Lorraine Carter. The screen dimmed as the reservation moved to the confirmation stage. Before she clicked submit, she hesitated. Not out of guilt, out of gravity. It wasn't just a venue she was reserving. It was dignity, memory. The seat she had been quietly pushed out of, now reclaimed in a name her daughter-in-law wouldn't recognize. After she hit confirm, her inbox pinged. Subject: Whitley Gardens. Deposit received. Status: Thanksgiving Day. Reserved. Lorraine leaned back in her chair, her breath finally steady. It felt almost surgical. The precision, the quiet of it. No outburst, no confrontation, just a pen stroke, just her name. She opened another tab and began building the event proposal. The gala would be a fundraiser for Women Restarting, a nonprofit she had volunteered with in the early 2000s. It helped retired or widowed women re-enter the job market through resume building, community kitchen training, and mentorship programs. Women like herself who had been told, "You've done enough," but still had fire left to give. She scrolled through their site and saw familiar faces. Mrs. Perkins from her night class, Anna from the church workshop, women who'd been told they were expired, outdated, and then proved otherwise. She didn't tell anyone. Not Margaret. Not even her daughter. Some truths ripen in silence, but something tugged at her conscience. Was this petty? Was it vengeance wrapped in charitable ribbon? Lorraine looked over at her old recipe box, cracked at the corners and held shut with a faded elastic band. She remembered how Chelsea once asked, "Do we really need these handwritten ones? I can just copy them digitally." That had been the first chip in the porcelain. She stepped outside for some air and nearly bumped into Margaret, who was returning from her morning walk. Margaret narrowed her eyes playfully. "You look like a woman holding a secret." Lorraine offered only a small smile. "Just planning something for the holidays." Quietly. Margaret paused, studying her. "You're not the type to sit out completely. I figured." Inside, Lorraine opened Chelsea's email thread. A new message had landed. Chelsea to Whitley Gardens' general inbox, marked Urgent Confirmation. Lorraine clicked on it. The timestamp read 9:17 a.m. Her own confirmation? 9:03 a.m. 17 minutes too late. Lorraine didn't gloat. She simply closed her laptop and sat back down, hands folding in her lap. It was done. The table was hers, not the oak one in her dining room, but the symbolic one, the place where her name had always belonged, but was recently left off the guest list. That afternoon, as she watered her plants on the front porch, she heard Chelsea's voice drift from the other side of the screen door. "I told them to hold the space. It's practically ours," Chelsea said, chuckling on the phone. Lorraine didn't flinch. She adjusted her watering can, humming faintly to herself. The water trickled over the marigolds, and the roots beneath, quiet and unseen, held firm. Lorraine walked past the screen door without a word. Inside, her inbox waited with the confirmation receipt. The header read, "Welcome to Whitley Gardens. We're honored to host your legacy." She bragged about her caterer, "So I gave him a better offer and a real cause." Lorraine stared at the name on the catering website, Dalton Langston, sleek logo, clean photos, trending fusion menus designed for photo ops and algorithms. Chelsea had boasted for weeks. He's modern, sustainable, and Michelin adjacent, whatever that meant. But Lorraine remembered him differently. Dalton had once stood in her classroom, a wiry young man with nervous hands and no real direction. He'd nearly failed his midterms, burnt 2 batches of biscotti, and once cried in the walk-in fridge after being yelled at during an externship. And yet, she'd seen something. When she handed him a clean chef's coat and told him, "You'll never earn a kitchen until you survive one," he listened. Now he was trending in food blogs. Lorraine called the number on the site and used a voice 1 notch softer, 1 shade more generic. "Hi, I'm representing a women's event at Whitley Gardens. We're considering Chef Dalton for a private holiday dinner. Same date, November 23rd. The assistant asked polite questions, then passed her along. A familiar voice came on the line. "This is Dalton." "Dalton, this is Lorraine Carter," she said. She waited for the click of recognition. There was a pause. Then, Chef Carter? His tone shifted instantly, formal giving way to warmth. I haven't heard that name in years. I go by Walker now, but yes, I taught you souffle in '98. And apparently, survival. He laughed, a soft, almost embarrassed sound. What can I do for you? I'm hosting an event that night, a legacy gala for retired women, educators, laborers, women who built things without ever posting about it. There was silence. Then, I'm flattered you'd even consider me. Lorraine smiled. I need a chef who understands the difference between curated and meaningful, who knows why apple pie should taste like memory, not foam. Dalton chuckled again, slower this time. You still speak in food metaphors. Always, she said. Would you meet me for a tasting? They met the next afternoon at a small test kitchen near downtown. Lorraine brought handwritten menu suggestions: rosemary turkey roulade, sage sweet potatoes, molasses glazed carrots, food that hugged, not postured. Dalton nodded along, occasionally pitching an update. Let's add a cranberry gas streak to the dressing, but never overpowering. He looked across the table with something deeper than nostalgia. I remember your kitchen, he said. You let me redo my final project twice. You earn it, Lorraine corrected. He leaned back, tapping the edge of the draft menu. Truthfully, I've got another client asking for that same night, some influencer Thanksgiving thing. No final contract yet, but the buzz is loud. I think it's Chelsea, right? Lorraine's jaw didn't tighten, her eyes didn't flicker. She just folded her napkin slowly. Yes, that's the one. Dalton looked at her, processing. She said you were taking a break this year. She said that, Lorraine echoed. Dalton was quiet for a beat, then said, she already emailed a rough menu. Avocado deviled eggs, miso glazed turkey, truffle popcorn as a starter. Lorraine raised a single eyebrow. Would you rather serve spinach crostini to influencers? She asked, or build a dinner that matters? Dalton exhaled. I want to serve something with roots. Let's do it. Then you're mine, she said. But the moment he agreed, Dalton's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and grimaced slightly. Speak of the devil. Lorraine watched as he opened the message. A text from Chelsea. Chelsea, just confirming we're locked for Thanksgiving? Want to post the chef collab teaser this week? Dalton looked up. I haven't signed anything yet. She's all promo. No contract. Just buzz. Lorraine reached into her purse, pulled out a manila folder, and slid a signed check and contract across the table. I don't do buzz. I do bookings. He nodded, eyes serious now. She's going to lose it. She'll have to book that too, Lorraine said. Dalton texted back, Hey Chelsea, can we talk later today? Just wrapping up another tasting first. He didn't confirm. He didn't deny. And Lorraine, calm as a still pond, folded her menu and walked out without another word. She called to finalize. I answered instead. The phone rang just after 9 a.m. A crisp, rehearsed tone in Chelsea's voice as she tapped her AirPods into place. Her iced latte sat untouched on the marble kitchen counter, condensation sliding slowly down the glass. She was already drafting a caption in her head. It's official! Hosting the most luxe Thanksgiving of the year. Hi, Whitley Gardens. This is Chelsea Williams. Just confirming the reservation for November 23rd? The event is listed under my name, or possibly under Williams' holiday event. The receptionist's voice was apologetic but matter-of-fact. I'm sorry, but that date has already been secured. Chelsea blinked. There must be a mistake. I emailed your team weeks ago. Yes, I see the inquiry, the receptionist said. But the reservation was never finalized with a deposit. The date was officially booked 2 days ago. A pit opened in Chelsea's stomach. Booked by who? There was a pause. Brief but razor-sharp. The reservation is for a private foundation event. It's listed as the Women of Legacy Gala. Chelsea's voice dropped half an octave. Who booked it? Another pause. A Lorraine Carter. Silence. The sound of Chelsea's acrylic nails tapping the countertop suddenly stopped. Her hand slowly lowered to her side. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. For a full 5 seconds, she just stood there, staring out the kitchen window, as the world reassembled itself in pieces she hadn't expected. Then, with fingers trembling just slightly, she opened her phone's contacts. Mom-in-law. Ring, ring, click. Lorraine's voice came through, as calm as a still lake. "Hello, Chelsea." "You stole my venue," Chelsea snapped, wasting no breath. "I booked it," Lorraine replied. Her voice was measured with an undertone of restrained satisfaction. "Before you did, like I've done every year with my kitchen." "You're being ridiculous, vindictive. You had your time, Lorraine." "And yet, oddly enough, I still have the calendar key." Chelsea inhaled, sharp and shallow. "You know I'd already started promoting. I've got sponsorship content planned. I've pitched it to local press." Lorraine didn't flinch. "Sounds like you were counting chickens before the kitchen was yours." "I could go public," Chelsea threatened. "Say you hijacked it, paint the whole thing as some jealous matriarch clinging to relevance. Then I'd have to remind people who actually mentored the chef you're now scrambling to reach." That made Chelsea pause. "You'll need a new menu first," Lorraine added, her voice like velvet lined with steel. Chelsea hung up without saying goodbye. Her chest tightened with panic as she opened her email app and scrolled furiously to her most recent correspondence with Dalton. Subject: Final menu, confirmation, Thanksgiving. November 23rd, Chelsea had written just 2 days earlier. "Just confirming we're locked in and good to start teasing collab content." Whitley Eats. There it was. A new email, time-stamped just 30 minutes ago. Subject: Thanksgiving event. Update. "Hi Chelsea, apologies for the delay in response. Unfortunately, I've had a shift in my schedule and won't be available for the 23rd. Best wishes for your event." Dalton Chelsea stared at the screen, her face flushing hot with disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me!" She dropped her phone and grabbed her car keys, mumbling to herself. "Number no, no, no." Meanwhile, back at Lorraine's sunroom, sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains as she folded a linen napkin on her lap and sipped from a cup of Earl Grey. The floral scent of lavender floated from a nearby diffuser, mixing with the cinnamon simmering on the stovetop. She didn't even need to check her phone. She knew what had happened. She could feel the storm building across town in someone else's kitchen. Outside, a breeze rustled the wind chimes. Lorraine stood and walked toward the front window, where a box of gold foil name cards sat on the sill, handwritten, timeless. She pulled one from the stack. It read, "Legacy doesn't RSVP. It shows up anyway." On Chelsea's screen, a second notification came in. "Dalton Langston tagged you in a post. Honored to cook for the Women of Legacy Gala this Thanksgiving." Her hands curled into fists. Lorraine had stolen more than her venue. She'd taken back the story. She posted, "Pumped to host the most elegant Thanksgiving ever. I let the algorithm handle the truth." Chelsea sat at her sleek white kitchen island, the morning light hitting her just right as she adjusted her ring light. Her fingers tapped rapidly across her phone screen, curating the caption like she was editing a press release. The image she'd chosen was flawless. A stock photo of Whitley Gardens ballroom draped in twinkle lights and cream linens, overlaid with gold script reading, "Thanksgiving reimagined coming soon." She typed with smug finality, "Pumped to host the most elegant Thanksgiving ever. Whitley Gardens, grateful and glam. Curated by Chelsea." Her thumb hovered over the post button for only a second before committing. The likes came quickly. So did the comments. "Yas! Can't wait to see your tablescape. Will you be posting the menu? Is it open to guests or invite only?" Chelsea leaned back in her chair, pleased. Her latte had gone cold, but the praise was warm. Then came the notification. "Whitley Gardens commented on your post, excited to welcome the Women of Legacy Gala that evening." Chelsea blinked, then blinked again. She clicked the tag, heart sinking. The Whitley Gardens profile had reposted an event flyer. Elegant, understated. The caption read, "An evening celebrating women who paved the way." November 23rd. The logo at the bottom? Lorraine's maiden name, LLC. She stared, stunned, as the comments under her own post shifted. "Wait, so who's actually hosting? Thought you said this was your event? Aren't they doing a gala that night? I just saw it on the venue's page." The polished facade cracked like thin porcelain. Chelsea's fingers moved fast, responding to a few comments with vague phrasing. "Hey, plans shifted last minute, so it's a more intimate thing now. Still working out final details. Stay tuned. It's all family-based, no drama, just love and gratitude." But the algorithm didn't care for damage control. It favored heat, and Lorraine's Gala post had ignited something. Meanwhile, in her cozy sunroom, Lorraine sat in her worn corduroy reading chair, glasses perched low on her nose, watching it all unfold on her tablet. She wasn't gloating, exactly, but her lips curled slightly as she scrolled through the comment thread. Margaret, her oldest friend, texted, "Chelsea's unraveling online. This is better than cable." Lorraine didn't respond. She simply tapped print on the thread. A stack of crisp white pages rolled from her printer moments later. She clipped them neatly and slid them into a manila folder labeled, in block penmanship, "Receipts." Across town, Chelsea's thumbs were starting to tremble. She slammed her laptop shut and stormed out the back door, the screen door clanging behind her like a gavel. Lorraine didn't flinch when the footsteps thudded against her back patio. "Of course," she murmured, just before the door swung open. Chelsea appeared in the doorway, her cheeks flushed, eyes flashing. "You just declared war over stuffing and side dishes," she said. Her voice trembled, not from sadness, but the shrill panic of losing control. Lorraine stood, calmly folding the wool throw from her lap and setting it aside. "No," she said with absolute precision. "Over silence." Chelsea scoffed. "What are you trying to prove? That you're not too old to host? That you can still pull strings? Great. Congrats. You booked a room and poached a chef. Want a medal?" Lorraine stepped closer, voice softer now. "You took my table, my recipes, my role, and you did it smiling, like I should thank you. You're twisting this. I'm restoring it." A moment passed, thick with the scent of jasmine tea and unspoken years of resentment. "I'll make this right," Chelsea hissed. "I'll spin this." "Go ahead," Lorraine said, "but next time, make sure the table you're setting actually has legs." Chelsea's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it until she stormed back into her car. The screen read, "At Chef Dalton Langston just posted, 'Cooking for the women who taught me flavor before fame.'" A photo of Lorraine and Chef Dalton, arms linked, captioned, "Thanksgiving at its truest." She said I was dramatic, but her menu had 5 types of aioli. Lorraine stood at the long oak table in her dining room, a yellow legal pad in front of her and reading glasses sliding down her nose. The soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway was the only sound for minutes, until she drew a bold line across the paper and wrote, "Seating, 40 confirmed, 12 wait list." The list wasn't just numbers, it was names. Marcia, who taught home ec for 42 years before the district cut the program. Grace, who used to lead career workshops for single mothers. Joanne, who'd once run a church kitchen without ever getting a title for it. These weren't influencers. They were women who'd done the quiet labor of keeping homes, hearts, and hopes together. Lorraine stared at the sheet. Her fingers trembled, not from doubt but the scale of it all. This had started as a response to insult. Now it felt like legacy. She picked up her phone and called Margaret. Margaret answered with the usual flair. "Well, if it isn't the hostess with the most vengeance," Lorraine chuckled but kept her voice soft. "Do you think I'm doing too much?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I started this to take back what was mine, but now it's turned into this whole movement. Women are RSVPing like it's the Oscars. Chef Dalton just sent me a revised menu with 4 courses and 2 signature cocktails." Margaret paused, the humor draining slightly. "You're asking if you're still doing this for the right reasons." Lorraine sighed. "Exactly." There was a silence, filled only with the faint rustling of Margaret's wind chimes on the other end of the call. "Lorraine," Margaret said finally, "you're not wrong to be angry, but just be sure you don't lose yourself proving a point. Legacy is bigger than ego." The words settled into Lorraine like a warm weight. She hung up, then crossed out one line on her paper, "Signature dessert station." Instead, she wrote, "Heirloom pies, potluck style, 1 story per slice." Meanwhile, across town, Chelsea's fingers flew furiously across her laptop keyboard, her nails clicking like warning bells. Everything was booked. Every halfway decent venue, catering kitchen, event hall, garden terrace, all gone or double-priced. One manager had even chuckled when she'd asked for a Thanksgiving Day slot. "Ma'am, it's 2 weeks away. People book a year in advance." Chelsea slammed the laptop shut and stared at her phone. Her Instagram story from yesterday had lost over 200 followers, and her DMs were full of polite confusion. "Wait, didn't you say you were hosting at Whitley Gardens? I saw Chef Dalton's post. Looks like he's cooking for someone else now." Even Alex had started asking questions. "What's really going on, Chels? Why is everyone tagging your mom instead of you?" Chelsea had brushed him off, but he wasn't stupid. His silences were growing longer. Lorraine, unaware of the latest unraveling, was assembling envelopes by candlelight, licking seals with the rhythm of a woman who'd done this 1,000 times before. Each name, handwritten. Each card, an invitation to reclaim more than a seat. It was an invitation to be seen. Her phone rang. The screen flashed. Whitley Gardens. Her stomach dipped. "Hello? Hi, this is Amanda from the venue. I know it's after hours, but there's been a complication." Lorraine straightened. "What kind of complication?" Amanda's voice was calm but firm. "Not overbooking. Don't worry. But something was flagged with your paperwork, and it's best we talk in person. Can you come in tomorrow?" Lorraine's fingers tightened around the phone. Her voice held steady, but something inside her cracked open. "Yes," she said. "I'll be there first thing." Lorraine placed the last envelope on the pile and blew out the candle beside her. The room went dark, except for the glowing screen of her phone, still showing the words, "There's been a complication. I was prepared for sabotage. I wasn't prepared for a zoning loophole." The morning was unusually warm for November, but Lorraine felt a chill crawl across her shoulders as she stepped through the glass doors of Whitley Gardens. The receptionist, Amanda, stood as if expecting her, lips pressed into a thin, professional smile. "Lorraine Carter? Thank you for coming in so quickly." Lorraine nodded, clutching her leather binder to her chest. "You said there was a complication?" Amanda gestured toward a small conference room tucked beside the venue's bridal suite, its walls lined with framed photos of sun-drenched weddings and gala nights. Lorraine took a seat at the table while Amanda slid a thin folder toward her. "There's been a zoning compliance flag on your event," Amanda said, flipping the folder open to reveal a check, with a single item circled in red ink. "You're listed as a public nonprofit fundraiser, which is fine, but your LLC hasn't submitted a temporary food service permit. Without that, your gala technically violates our event vendor agreement." Lorraine stared at the form. The printed line at the bottom read, "Must be submitted 14 days prior to the event." She had 11. Her throat tightened. Is this something Chelsea could have triggered?" Amanda looked up, cautious. "We've had a caller asking about event classification and permits for Thanksgiving. I'm not allowed to say who." Of course it was Chelsea. Lorraine reached for the pen Amanda offered and took a slow breath. "So what happens if I don't get this done?" "We'd have to downgrade your event to private status," Amanda said. "That means no open seating, no media, and possibly no catering." She softened. "I'm sorry. I know this is a lot." Lorraine's hands trembled slightly as she began writing. Her script was neat. Years of teaching culinary students had trained her to fill out forms fast, but right now her vision blurred at the edges. She could hear the echo of her old culinary school instructor from decades ago, that bitter voice rising from memory. "You don't belong in a commercial kitchen. Too old, too slow." That failure had followed her for years. She'd cried in her car afterward, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And now, after all this, Chelsea might win on a technicality? Lorraine's pen paused. Number not this time. She looked up. Is there a way to expedite it? Amanda tapped her pen against her chin, thinking. Then her eyes widened. Wait, your gala is under the Women of Legacy Foundation, right? Didn't that group register for city nonprofit certification last year? Lorraine blinked, caught off guard. Yes, we ran a soup kitchen pop-up through my church partner last Thanksgiving. Why? Amanda pulled a binder off a shelf behind her and flipped rapidly through laminated pages. If you were approved last year and still in good standing, your permit carries over for 12 months under the city's small impact clause. We can verify your status. Lorraine leaned forward. So I'm covered? Amanda smiled. If we confirm it, yes, you're grandfathered in. A long silence passed. Lorraine exhaled so slowly she barely felt her chest move. Her body had tensed so hard she hadn't noticed the ache building behind her eyes. She slumped back slightly, drained but trying not to show it. Please, run the check, she said. Amanda stepped out with the binder. Lorraine stayed behind, staring at the half-filled permit form. Her hands rested lightly on the page as if bracing for a tremor that hadn't come yet. She thought of Chelsea's confident Instagram posts, the hashtags, the curated holiday aesthetic, the borrowed caterer, the stolen idea. But she also thought of the women who had said yes to her, who were ironing blouses and printing their bios for the program right now. This wasn't about Chelsea anymore. Amanda returned 5 minutes later, a bright glow behind her glasses. You're in the system. Your foundation's status is active until December. You're officially cleared, Lorraine. Lorraine blinked. You're sure? Positive, and... Amanda leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between us? I'm rooting for you. That gala sounds like it matters. Lorraine smiled for the first time that morning. It wasn't triumphant, it was earned. As Lorraine packed up her binder, Amanda added, Oh, and Chef Dalton just dropped off his final menu packet. He said he had one change you'll love, but wouldn't tell me what it was. Lorraine paused, curious. Did he leave it in my file? Amanda winked. He said to open it at home, said it's a personal touch. She wanted control of a holiday. I reclaimed control of my identity. The knock came just before dusk, light and hesitant. Lorraine had been in the middle of folding linen napkins, elegant ivory ones she'd had monogrammed years ago for her 50th birthday dinner, and paused, letting her fingers trace the stitched L before answering the door. Alex stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, his face caught somewhere between defensiveness and guilt. His posture was slouched, not his usual breezy confidence, and his eyes didn't meet hers immediately. Got a minute? He asked. Lorraine stepped aside without a word, leading him through the familiar archway into the sunroom where the late afternoon light fell in gold sheets across the worn armchairs. The scent of cinnamon tea lingered in the air. Her pie crusts cooled quietly on the kitchen counter behind them, like silent witnesses. He sat. She didn't. Instead, Lorraine crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway, letting him stew in the quiet for a moment. Alex cleared his throat. I heard from Chelsea. What happened at Whitley Gardens? Did you? She said, tone neutral. I assume you mean when I reserved a space she never actually booked. Alex eyed. Mom, come on. She feels humiliated. She feels something. That's new, Lorraine replied flatly. He looked up at her, eyes flicking with frustration. Are you trying to humiliate her? I'm trying, Lorraine said, her voice calm but cutting, to be seen. Alex blinked. She stepped forward now, voice softening, but no less firm. For 30 years I hosted this holiday. I baked pies when I was grieving your father. I cooked turkeys when I was teaching 6 classes a week. I cleaned up after your kids without a complaint. You think I cared about the stress? Her eyes met his, full of ache and steel. I loved that table because it was mine, not a burden, a legacy. He swallowed hard, gaze dropping. You both made me invisible, she added. There was silence again, this time heavier, denser. Alex tapped his knee, then finally spoke. Chelsea's done a lot, maybe too much, too fast. She said it was about modernizing, making things easier. Easier doesn't mean better, Lorraine said. And easier shouldn't mean erasing people. He nodded slowly. Without a word, Lorraine walked over to the shelf near the fireplace. She pulled out a thick photo album bound in burgundy leather and handed it to him. The edges were worn, but inside the pages were immaculate, each photo placed with care, captioned in delicate cursive. Alex opened it. There were pictures from every Thanksgiving since he was 12. Lorraine at the head of the table, kids passing mashed potatoes, Mark carving the turkey, laughter frozen in candids. Chelsea appeared in the later ones, but always as a guest, never the host. Lorraine knelt next to his chair, her voice low. "You don't have to choose sides, Alex. I'm not asking for that. But you do have to remember who kept the house warm all these years." He flipped to a photo of himself at 16, arms wrapped around Lorraine, cranberry sauce smudged on his cheek. "I forgot," he murmured. "I forgot how much this meant to you." She stood. "You don't have to make up for it. Just stop pretending I was never there." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was reflective. Something softened in Alex's face, and for the first time in weeks, Lorraine saw her son, not Chelsea's husband, not a passive observer, but the boy she'd raised. As he stood to leave, Lorraine felt a pang of something she hadn't in a long time. Connection. It was small, but real. Her phone buzzed just as she walked him to the door. It was Margaret. Text message. Chelsea just announced a private family dinner at her condo. No guests, no chef. Lorraine stared at the screen, lips curving slightly, not in triumph, but in understanding. The game wasn't over, but the board had shifted. She said I was too old to host, but she couldn't even set the table without a rental. Chelsea hadn't planned for folding chairs. She hadn't planned for the mismatched silverware or the boxed cranberry wine that left a strange film on every glass. But now, hours before Thanksgiving dinner, this was what she had. A makeshift dining table cobbled together with 2 IKEA desks, a synthetic floral centerpiece that still smelled like glue, and a dimmer switch that buzzed every time the lights flickered low. The caterer was gone. The venue was gone. And her influencer holiday dreams had collapsed under the weight of a calendar reservation she never clicked confirm on. In the kitchen, Chelsea frantically unwrapped store-bought pies. Plastic clamshells cracked open, releasing the unmistakable scent of preservatives and cinnamon that came in one sharp, artificial burst. She muttered curses under her breath, trying to fluff a supermarket salad into something remotely postable. Alex leaned against the hallway wall, watching her scramble with a tight jaw. He hadn't offered help, but he hadn't left either. "You're not even going to light the candles?" he asked quietly, nodding toward the decorative tapers sitting unlit on the windowsill. Chelsea shot him a glare. "Do you want to do this yourself?" He didn't answer. Elsewhere in the city, soft jazz notes rose like steam through Whitley Gardens. Lorraine stood near the main archway in a navy-wrap dress, her silver hair pulled into a low chignon. She clutched a program in one hand and a crystal flute of sparkling cider in the other. The ballroom glowed in amber tones. Candles flickered on each table, nestled between vintage serving platters and hand-calligraphed name cards. Elder women in velvet shawls and understated pearls sat at round tables, their eyes glimmering beneath layers of quiet pride. It wasn't flashy, but it was unforgettable. Lorraine walked through the crowd slowly, taking in each detail like she was memorizing the night. The faint scent of rosemary wafting from the roast chicken, the sound of laughter echoing across polished floors, the clink of cutlery and glass against china. Each moment felt like a layer added back to something she'd nearly lost. Her place, her purpose, her name. At the head table, chef. Dalton stood and gently tapped his spoon against his glass. The room quieted. "To the women," he said, voice clear but warm, "who fed families before food styling apps existed, who taught us how to serve without asking for credit, who showed up every time when no one else did." A ripple of applause moved through the room. "And especially," he added, turning to Lorraine, "to the one who taught me to respect a kitchen and the hands that built it." Lorraine's throat tightened. She rose, setting down her glass with a soft clink. The crowd watched her with a reverent hush. "They told me I was too old to serve," she said, voice slightly shaky. "Tonight, I'm serving more than food. I'm serving memory, resilience, and the quiet dignity that comes from feeding people because you love them, not because it's trendy." Applause broke out again, stronger this time. Some women wiped tears. Others raised their glasses. And for the first time in years, Lorraine felt something land back inside her. something sturdy and rooted. She was not an afterthought. She was an origin. Across town, a phone buzzed on Chelsea's cluttered dining table. One of her guests, a distant cousin from her influencer circle, had quietly stepped into the hallway and snapped a photo of the gala's Instagram feed. The caption on Whitley Garden's official page read, "This is what real tradition looks like. Honoring women who built legacies beyond the dining room." Beneath it, tagged photos streamed in. Radiant older women, Chef Dalton mid-toast, Lorraine mid-laugh with a former student who now ran her own culinary nonprofit. Chelsea stared at the post, her grip tightening on the phone. "Did you see this?" she hissed at Alex. He didn't answer immediately. Then gently, "Looks like they're having a good night." Chelsea threw her napkin onto the folding chair, the sound sharp and paper-thin. Lorraine, back at the gala, reaches into her clutch to silence her buzzing phone. Chelsea's name glowing across the screen. She doesn't answer. They thought I was serving dinner. I was feeding memory, dignity, and legacy. The room was hushed, but not quiet. It was a hush made of awe and weight and memory, a symphony of small moments no one dared interrupt. Crystal glasses clinked against vintage china, candles flickered gently over linen napkins embroidered by hand, and beneath it all was the warmth of laughter too long forgotten in formal spaces. Lorraine stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching it all unfold like a slow-moving film she had once dreamed but never seen. Dozens of women filled Whitley Gardens that evening, not models, not influencers, but teachers, retired nurses, cafeteria workers, foster mothers and grandmothers who had once sewn dresses and stretched casseroles and taught lessons without ever asking for applause. Many of them wore dresses with seams they had stitched themselves. They didn't walk in heels, they walked with experience. Lorraine caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirrored column beside the head table. Her posture was tall but unforced, her silver hair perfectly pinned, and her navy velvet wrap dress hugged her arms like an embrace. She looked, at last, exactly how she felt, whole. A jazz trio played softly from the garden entrance. Chef Dalton moved from table to table with ease, delivering plates himself, describing each dish as if it were a memory instead of a menu. Wild mushroom risotto with caramelized shallots, cornbread panzanella with Lorraine's rosemary lavender vinaigrette, pear tartlets drizzled with burnt sugar glaze, her signature recipe from years ago, now being plated with reverence. A soft knock of the microphone broke through the chatter. Lorraine stepped forward, but it wasn't her cue. Instead, a woman in a plum dress, short, solid, her hands visibly shaking, rose from the honoree table. I was asked to say something," she said. Her voice cracked at first, but steadied with each breath. "I was a janitor for 34 years. At first, no one learned my name, but they remembered my lasagna." The crowd chuckled softly. "I used to leave plates in the teacher's lounge. One day, a new culinary teacher found me in the hallway and said, 'This is seasoned like love.' She told me I didn't have to just clean the cafeteria. I could lead it." That teacher was Lorraine. Lorraine's hand flew to her chest. The woman's name was Denise. She hadn't seen her in nearly 2 decades. Denise took a breath. "I got certified. I became food services director for the district. I retired last year. And I never forgot who first said I could do more than mop around someone else's meal." Applause roared through the room, not polite, not obligatory, real applause, the kind that traveled up your spine. Lorraine blinked fast. Emotion caught in her throat like a breadcrumb. A few minutes later, she returned to her seat at the head table, her eyes glassy, her soul full. Margaret leaned over and squeezed her hand. "You didn't just reclaim the holiday," she whispered. "You redefined it." As dessert was served, Lorraine caught sight of a familiar silhouette near the far arch of the ballroom. Alex. He wasn't dressed for a gala, just a gray sweater and dark jeans, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets. He didn't speak, didn't approach, just lingered on the edge of her moment like a child too old to beg but too hurt to leave. She wanted to walk over, but she didn't. Instead, he turned slowly and walked to her table when she wasn't looking. When she turned back, he was gone. In his place was a small white envelope, neatly folded, no markings. Lorraine picked it up. Her fingers trembled as she opened the flap. Inside was a note, handwritten in Alex's looping, slightly slanted print. I came tonight to understand. I left feeling ashamed. This was never about the table, it was about who built it. I'm sorry. She held the letter in her hands like it might disintegrate from the heat rising off her chest. She pressed it to her heart, just once, then folded it gently and slipped it into her clutch. As she stood to say her final thank yous, the event photographer approached. Ma'am, would you like to be in the front for the Gala press photo? City Hall might be using it in their end-of-year feature. He wrote what pride never let him say, and it broke something open. The envelope sat untouched on the kitchen counter until the house was silent enough to hear the hum of the refrigerator. Lorraine had carried it inside like it might burst into flames in her hand. She hadn't opened it at the Gala. Something about reading it in public felt too raw, too vulnerable. Now, under the dim golden glow of the kitchen pendant light, she sat at the table she used to use for dough kneading and homework help. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid her finger beneath the flap and pulled out the single folded sheet. The paper was heavy, cream-colored, stationary, the kind that meant something. Alex's handwriting hadn't changed since high school. Sharp angles, slight tilt, like he wrote while leaning against a wall. Mom, I didn't protect your place in this family. I let someone else decide you were done. I told myself it was modernization, not erasure. But deep down I knew better. I watched Chelsea edge you out slowly, one suggestion at a time. And I stayed quiet. I let you go cold while trying to keep our life warm. I failed you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope this letter finds you before regret settles too deep. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. Lorraine didn't cry, not immediately. Instead, her body released something deeper, a quiet exhale. The kind that comes not from sadness or even relief, but from being seen after being invisible too long. She read the letter again, then a third time. On the windowsill above the sink, the moonlight caught the corner of a faded photograph. Alex as a toddler, sitting in a mixing bowl covered in flour, his gummy smile wide enough to swallow the room. She folded the letter back neatly, not tucking it away but placing it inside the kitchen drawer beside her old wooden spoons. The next morning, her phone buzzed. A text from Alex. She wants to do Christmas. I told her no. No greeting, no preamble, just that. Lorraine stared at it for a long time, her thumb hovering over the reply. Then she typed, "Tell her she can, but I won't be coming. No cruelty, no explanation, just clarity." That afternoon, she baked a pie. Just one, but not out of habit or nostalgia, out of choice. The apples were Honeycrisp, peeled slowly, methodically. Her paring knife felt familiar in her grip. The cinnamon filled the house with a warmth that didn't ask to be shared. She rolled the dough thin, just the way her mother had taught her, and when it folded over the filling, she felt a kind of peace she hadn't known since before Chelsea came into the picture. Lorraine placed the finished pie on the cooling rack and stared at it, not like a dish, but like a boundary finally respected. As the sun dipped and shadows climbed the walls, she made tea, opened her laptop, and checked her email. Subject, Holiday Feature Inquiry, Women of Legacy Gala, from Emily Tran, lifestyle reporter, The Valley View. Hi Lorraine, I attended your gala this past week and was deeply moved. I've spoken to several guests and I'd love to feature you and the event in our December Holiday Legacy series. We're profiling women who changed the narrative this season, not with noise, but with meaning. Are you available for a photo and interview next week? Lorraine reread it twice. Then again. A smile spread slowly across her face. Not smug, not vengeful, just earned. She hovered her finger over reply, then noticed a new message arrive beneath it, this one from Chelsea. Subject, we need to talk. She used my caterer. I used her old unpaid invoice. The email from Chelsea sat unread in Lorraine's inbox, its subject line sterile and vague. Need to resolve this. But Lorraine didn't open it, not yet. She had other unfinished business. In the bottom drawer of her hallway filing cabinet, tucked between tax folders and yellowing warranty slips, was a slim manila envelope labeled Chelsea Branding, 2017. Lorraine pulled it out with steady hands, the kind of quiet deliberation a chef might use before carving the final slice of a roast. Inside was a paper copy of the original invoice, $3,000 for web branding, design photography, and social media setup, the foundation of Chelsea's now booming lifestyle blog. At the time, Chelsea had been new to the family and new to the world of content creation. Lorraine had offered the money as a gesture of support, hopeful that helping her daughter-in-law find her footing might bring them closer. She remembered the day she'd written the check. Chelsea had stood barefoot in her kitchen, thanking her between mouthfuls of cranberry muffins. "We're family," she'd said, "not a business." And just like that, repayment became a ghost. Lorraine had never mentioned it again. Until now. She picked up the phone and called Martin, the same lawyer who'd helped her formalize the Gala's nonprofit foundation. His voice was warm but intrigued when she explained the situation. "You kept the invoice all this time?" he asked. "Some debts are paid in memory first," she said. "Now it's time for the paper to catch up." The contract had been simple, written in Lorraine's maiden name, her culinary consulting LLC, long dormant until recently reactivated for the Women of Legacy event. Martin confirmed its legality and filed a small claims request that same week. Chelsea would receive it by certified mail. Lorraine didn't tell anyone. Not Margaret. Not Alex. It wasn't vengeance. Not exactly. It was balance. 3 days later, Lorraine sat at her sunlit breakfast nook with a cup of green tea steeping quietly in her hand. The scent of bergamot hung in the air. Her cat purred against her slippers. The doorbell rang. Lorraine opened the door to find a delivery courier holding a white envelope bearing a government seal and a return receipt signature tab. Inside, confirmation that Chelsea had been served. Later that evening, the group chat Lorraine was still, miraculously, part of, lit up. Chelsea. "Wow. Guess some people think family means lawsuits now." Lorraine. "Some people think family means unpaid labor." "I disagree." That was all. No other replies followed. Silence bloomed. 2 days later, Chelsea's name appeared in the court's online docket. She'd filed a countersuit claiming Lorraine had offered the funds as a gift. Martin called her the moment the filing went through. "She's going to argue intent," he warned gently. "But we have her email from 2017 saying, 'Thanks, I'll pay you back when the blog gets on its feet.'" That? And the signed contract? We're solid. Lorraine sat quietly on the phone, staring at the soft flicker of the stove's pilot light across the kitchen. "She used my caterer," she said finally. "She just didn't think I'd still have the receipts." Martin chuckled. "You've got more than that. You've got precision." When the envelope containing Chelsea's counterclaim arrived, Lorraine added it to her growing folder, now labeled simply Restoration. She slipped it in behind a sticky note she had added earlier that week. It read, "Consider this interest on silence, not dollars." The emotional weight of it didn't hit until hours later, as Lorraine sat on her porch watching dusk wrap itself around the edges of the sky. The porch creaked beneath her. She could smell rosemary from the planter box beside her. For years, she had thought keeping the peace meant staying quiet. But now she knew. Peace wasn't silence. It was being heard without asking twice. The next morning, Martin forwarded a scanned document, Chelsea's original contract, signed in blue ink by both women. Lorraine stared at the signature line beside her own maiden name, LLC, and smiled. "They cleared me from the guest list. I created my own." The morning sun spilled across Lorraine's kitchen like honey, slow, golden, and unbothered by the world's noise. She moved quietly, barefoot on tile, folding napkins by instinct, not performance. No menu cards, no centerpiece photo shoots, no hashtags, just plates, just warmth, just women. Her living room had been reimagined overnight. The long table, once dragged out only for family holidays, was now dressed in pale linen and sunlight. 6 place settings, mismatched but cherished. The air carried the scent of rosemary biscuits and warm peach preserves, both of which Lorraine had baked the night before while jazz played softly in the background. She wasn't hosting for approval today, or legacy, or even tradition. She was hosting because she wanted to, and that changed everything. Margaret arrived first, clutching a ceramic dish and grinning. Brought my blackberry cobbler. Figured we'd need something a little sinful. Perfect, Lorraine smiled, ushering her in. This is a no-guilt table. Soon after came Dottie. Eloise, Renee, and Judith, all women from the Gala. Women who had once been cafeteria workers, teachers, caretakers, secretaries, lives spent pouring into others, too often unnoticed. They hugged without awkwardness. They greeted without comparison. One by one, they filled the space with stories and casserole dishes and the gentle, unspoken understanding of women who had lived full lives in half the credit. They sat. No one waited for permission to eat. Between bites of quiche and sips of citrus tea, they passed around old recipes scribbled in fading ink, trading not just ingredients but survival tactics, how to stretch meatloaf over 4 days, how to navigate divorce court without a lawyer, how to correct a man gently enough for him to think it was his idea. Judith lifted her glass. To quiet women who built loud lives. To mistakes we learned from, added Eloise. To knowing when to stay and when to leave, Margaret said, eyes flicking briefly to Lorraine. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was full. Lorraine leaned back in her chair and let it wash over her, not as the host, not as the matriarch, but as a woman among equals. A flash of memory rose. Mark, her late husband, sitting on the same porch years ago with his coffee, telling her, "When people forget your value, serve them absence. Then see who notices the chair's empty." She'd done exactly that, and instead of fading from the table, she'd built a better one. At the end of the meal, as the women cleared dishes and wrapped leftovers like muscle memory, Dottie pulled Lorraine aside near the sink. Her hands were still damp from rinsing. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "Next year, we should do it again. Bigger. I have a niece in PR. She'd love to help. We'll need a little seed money, though, unless you let me sponsor it." Lorraine raised an eyebrow. Dottie smiled. "On one condition, you let me call it Lorraine's Table. That name deserves to be on something permanent." Lorraine didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened, not with pride, but with something older, deeper, the sound of finally being seen, not for what she used to be, but for what she still was. "Lorraine's Table," she repeated, like a spell. Not Mom's house, not Thanksgiving duty, not Chelsea's inconvenience. A table that fed more than appetite, a table that fed memory, dignity, continuity. She turned toward the window where the light danced across the wooden floor and nodded slowly. "All right," she said, voice steady. "Let's set the date." As the women finished packing up, Lorraine's phone buzzed with a new notification. A reporter from the Bayview Chronicle had just published the headline, "Legacy Served: How One Woman Reclaimed the Table." "They called me outdated. I became unforgettable." The morning after Thanksgiving, Lorraine stepped into the cold with no destination, only movement. The wind bit at her cheeks, tugging at her wool scarf, but she welcomed the chill. It felt honest. Honest in a way yesterday's glittering gala or Chelsea's filtered aesthetic never could be. Her boots crunched over dry leaves scattered across the sidewalk, brittle underfoot, the only sound beside her steady breath. She passed shuttered storefronts, blinking neon signs from corner delis, and homes still glowing with the leftover warmth of family gatherings. At the end of Birch Street, near the edge of the park, she slowed. A folding table had been set up beside a stone bench, where 3 volunteers in puffer jackets and knit hats were arranging foil trays on portable burners. A woman with kind eyes handed out steaming cups of broth to a line of unhoused women wrapped in mismatched coats and scarves. Lorraine hesitated, hand still buried in her coat pocket. She hadn't come here to join them, but something in the quiet dignity of the setup tugged at her ribs. One of the volunteers caught her eye and smiled. "You here to help?" Lorraine nodded before she had time to think. "Yes, if you'll have me." They handed her a tray of fresh-baked rolls. Nothing fancy, just simple, warm, and made with care. She stood between 2 folding chairs, passing them out in silence. The women said "thank you" softly, or nodded, or said nothing at all. It didn't matter. Lorraine wasn't there to be seen. She was there to serve. And for the first time in months, she wasn't performing legacy. She was living it. As she handed a roll to an elderly woman with a weathered face and gentle hands, Lorraine noticed the woman wore a coat that looked decades old. A familiar one. Patterned wool. Deep red with fraying seams. Lorraine had owned the same coat in the 90s. It had been Mark's favorite. The woman smiled faintly. "This is the best part of the whole day." Lorraine returned the smile. "Mine too." The moment passed, quiet but potent. She didn't think about Chelsea's condo gathering, not the folding chairs, the boxed stuffing, the filtered stories that likely covered up the hollow evening. She didn't think about Alex, who had texted her a thumbs-up emoji the night before. She hadn't responded. The truth was, she didn't need to. She walked home as the sky began to shift. Gold bled into the gray, clouds parting like the slow exhale of the morning. Her keys jingled in her hand. The sound felt small, ordinary, but nothing about this day was ordinary. Inside, the house smelled of sage and citrus, left over from her tea. She placed the empty foil tray in the sink and poured herself a mug. She didn't sit right away. She walked to the refrigerator. There, held by a ceramic magnet shaped like a spoon, was the thank you card. Thick paper. Burgundy ink. To Lorraine. Thank you for feeding more than mouths. You fed our spirits, our stories, our strength. The Women of Legacy team. She stared at the words for a long moment. Then, carefully, she adjusted the magnet so the card was perfectly straight. Her fingers lingered on it longer than they needed to. This was the new tradition. This was her table now. No carving knives or velvet runners, no curated centerpieces or guest lists of who mattered more than whom. No needing a seat at someone else's table. She'd built her own, and she'd feed it with whoever needed to be seen. She sat down, folded one leg beneath her, and took a sip of tea. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was full in its own way, full of breath, of rest, of things not said, but deeply felt. A text pinged. From Chelsea. "We should talk. I think we both overreacted." Lorraine read it, then set her phone face down. She wasn't angry. She was just finished. She reached for her notepad instead. A new dish idea had come to her during the walk. "She took Thanksgiving from me. I turned it into something she'll never be invited to."